Honorable Wilson Sosion is a former nominated MP and not SecGen. Welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you and good morning.
And also Daniel Orogo is a political analyst and political and governance expert. Thank you for making time.
Always a pleasure.
And also Honorable Peter Mutuku Mutua is the head of service delivery within Nairobi County and also a political analyst. Welcome to the program.
Good morning.
I want to get a feel of your sentiment regarding these headlines, and we'll start with the ones that is captured on the Standard newspaper. Ruto's seal grab, a quietly passed law transferring the public seal, a symbol of government authority from the AG's office to the president's chief of staff may have troubling implications. Let me start with you, Honorable Sosion. What do you make of that?
I think that headline is just but a mere sensational politics where somebody is trying to attack a legal decision. A law that is passed by parliament is not passed quietly. It goes through the process of public participation and domiciling the seal of the president directly in the president's offices. There is nothing sinister about it. And I think as a country we've gone too far in trying to promote a treason in the authority of the office of the president. And I don't think as a country we are making any sense by discussing a seal of the president. In all jurisdictions, the seal of the president is with the president. And that's a public seal of the republic. And authority of the country is vested in the president by the people through their sovereign power and will. And it is stated in the constitution. So you cannot have your cake and eat it at the same time, and you cannot speak from both sides of the mouth. Once you give authority, and you allow the people to exercise their sovereign power and elect their president,
yes,
let the president stay with those instruments of authority.
Yeah.
That is an instrument of authority. And for the first time, we've seen the president use the seal in public, particularly when it comes to assenting to critical bills that are being enacted into law. And I think there is no issue. Let's talk about other things, but not the seal. What is the standard after trying to mobilize Kenyans to discuss the seal of the president of the authority of the Republic of Kenya? I think that is mere cheap pedestrian politics that has no consequence in the transformational agenda of the country.
Peter, what is the sentiment on this? Does this, is this something that should raise eyebrows or concern from Kenyans?
While I don't agree or support the headline, but the fact that they have given us information, we need to execute that information clearly and objectively. Number one, the question is, since time immemorial, since we became an independent state,
yes,
the seal has been domiciled where? The office of the Attorney General. At what point was agreed that should be removed there? To the office of the president?
Yes.
And then the newspaper says, besides being taken to the office of the president, it has been taken to the chief of staff. The reason that it has always been, in my own observation,
yes,
at the office of the Attorney General is for control purposes. Are we assured of control purposes when it is moved from the office of the Attorney General to the office of the president, and then under the president is said the office of the chief of staff? Remember, the office of the chief of staff is not one and the same as the office of the president. So we do not know whether there are controls, because I believe at the Attorney General there were controls when to move it, when to touch it, when to use it, and when to lock it somewhere at a certain sale. So for me, it requires a lot of thinking and be assured as Kenyans that the seal may not be misused by some staff and in the said office of the chief of staff.
Yes.
Yes.
Orogo, what do you make of this? Does this undermine the legal safeguards of this public seal and where it should be and how it should be used? Does that expose the country to what you would say are deals that are not in line or they're in line with the Constitution?
Well, I think this should also be seen in retrospect because, as my colleague has mentioned, from a historical, lens, from a legal lens, from a political angle, historically Kenyans are accustomed. The authority has been domiciled within the state law office. In essence, it meant then that the office of the Attorney General safeguards the use and the utilization of the seal.
Yeah.
In the essence that there are legal procedures that are involved in the usage of that seal, which means if the office of the president would require, for example, to stamp authority in the sending of the bill, it has gone through a processes, the parliamentary processes. Yes. It has gone through a public participation processes to that which gives authority for the seal and the powers invested on the president, as Sosion has mentioned, through the will of the people now to stamp authority in any law after a legal and a due parliamentary process is exhausted. However, I think as you've indicated, that the rest Kenyans are asking whether there was a rigorous consultation when that kind of transition was done, which I think is also important because Sosion has mentioned that all these particular procedures are within the prism of public participation and indirect rule that is stipulated in the Constitution. And if that then is true, then the transfer of the seal from one office to the rest, when did the Mwananchi has a say on that particular procedure? So I am grumbling to understand the transitional processes from relocating of that seal from the state law office to the office, to the state house, whoever is in charge, the head of public service and who is where the seal is currently domiciled.
Yes.
So I think that particular absence and lack of information. I hear the bill was passed for that, but it seems Kenyans were not aware that that transition was probably done.
Yeah.
And if it is not done, the absentia of knowledge leaves rooms for assumption and pessimism. So I think it's quite important for that to be elaborated. The office of the government spokesperson could definitely, tell the public how, why. It is within the wisdom of the executive to transfer that seal from one office to the rest. I think there's more questions, that really needs to be answered with regards to that. But as long as it persists, then the public can assume that powers are being clipped from the office of the Attorney General and that democratic processes are being undermined secretly, through processes that are not within the public knowledge.
So, Sion, does this speak about interfering with the intent of the Constitution, especially regarding the separation of power of what an AG can do and what head of public service can do in as far as this matter is concerned?
Trying to create conflict within two offices and to promote competition without giving adequate information is not correct. And we are playing catch up in the administrative order of running government. Why would the Attorney General insist on keeping the seal when the seal is about the authority of the president and that of the state? I think it is in the best wisdom, let the Attorney General's office do its legal work independently, but matters to do with authority through the seal, let it be vested in the office of the president directly. If we talk about the chief of staff and the head of the public service, that is almost number one mtu wa mkono of the president, and nothing can be done without the authority of the president. And the president having that authority, you know, the president is also the commander-in-chief. So as in executing powers of the office of the commander-in-chief, the president does not have to look at even his own deputy. We have seen situations where people want to elevate the deputy president to look like the deputy commander-in-chief. And I think this is creating confusion in perfect traditions of authority and seal. When a president is elected, he becomes the only commander-in-chief. And number two to the commander-in-chief is the chief of defense forces. That's a fact for sure. So when it comes to the president exercising official authority where the seal is utilized and no one else uses the seal, the head of public service does not use the seal in any way. It is the president himself who imposes the seals to documents. And we've seen him do it in public. Do you want to use the office of the Attorney General to control and manage the president so that when you elect the president, some of these powers are taken away by certain officers? I don't think that is the case. If indeed the seal had been there from independence as per the tradition of the republic, the existing circumstances within the political ecosystem in the 60s is different from the post-2010. And remember, post-2010 and pre-2010, there's been a lot of severe attack on the authority of the president, and people say the president has imperial powers, so you must withdraw, including even where he keeps the seal. I think those are two small things.
All right.
The seal is only utilized by the president.
All right.
So if the president so decides that the seal is domiciled in his office at State House and the office of the chief of staff, because that is where the president officially operates, the president does not operate at the office of the Attorney General. Let the office of the Attorney General be independent.
And Peter, what do you make of this? Because the way people are finding out about this, was it the best way for Kenyans to find out that the seal has been moved from the AG's office?
Well, now the information is out there in the public. The burden of defense or proof rests with the office of the president. Okay? Whether the right procedure was followed or not. And whether it was the right time to do that. And what made those changes. What factors were considered so that that seal, as important as it is, because there is no official transaction of this government without that seal. Was it misused, or was it prone to be misused where it used to be domiciled then? And now that it's now in the public, whether the newspaper is being called a rogue newspaper or not, now it is the burden, the burden of proof rests with the government. As he said, the spokesman or any official from the government should be out there addressing our fears and telling us it was done in the right manner. It is not going to be misused. It is going to be safe, and it's only going to be used by the president whenever he needs it. We will not going to have issues in the future where it was misused by unauthorized personnel.
Yes.
The other thing, when the newspaper says that it's going to be domiciled in the office of the chief of staff, I don't know whether that's what you read. There is a law that guides who keeps what. All right? For example, even a simple thing like an automobile.
Yes.
Former nominated MP, Honorable Sosioni, when he used to be, to be driven around by an official driver, he was, unless law changed, he was not supposed to touch that car. It's only the driver that's supposed to drive you around. And as long as it's known that your official driver is then this and that. You are not going to pick your brother because simply he's a driver to drive you around in an official car. Even the law, there must be clear law. In the absence or when the president is busy or now that is in the public, that the seal sort of is domiciled in the office of the chief of staff, we need to know how the chief of staff handles that precious tool that is called seal.
Yes.
Yes.
Indeed. Let's gravitate to another story that is making headlines on the front page of the Star. IEBC vetting.
Allow me.
Okay.
Before,
Okay. Just a minute.
before
Just
you
a minute.
finish
Just a
that.
minute.
I was to speak when you're taking a break.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Respond.
So I was vehemently disagreeing with Honorable Sociology that the vested powers of the president, we do not have an absolute power that is invested on the president. In fact, we envision in our constitution that there's separation of powers. The three organs of government checks on one another. And in this sense, the state law office, by the virtue that is there, stands as an office that advises the government of Kenya. An office that approves some of this particular legislation and advises the government not to find itself on legal landmines ahead. Professor Gideon Muigai is on record on his resignation, where he said he had tried to advise the president, but probably was not following the instruction, and the government was finding itself on a number of litigations. This same case we are actually seeing here, and you've alluded to, not us but the papers. But why are Kenyans feeling that this particular transition is done in secrecy?
Yes.
I think that is the main thing. If the state law office approves some of this government, before a law is assented to, and there is a reason probably that why SEAL was domiciled in the office of the Attorney General, because I foresee a situation where he could advise the president to assent or not. There are certain bills that probably are not within the public domain, or the public are finding it difficult to comprehend. And at that particular opportune time, the state law office would advise the president not to assent it to them. See this in context for what we are seeing right now. There are a number of laws that sometimes the public are just up, and this was assented to, including the recent law about the finance bill that, there was a lot of guys are raising up in hand. So between a process where the parliament, which is foreseen to be controlled from the executive, I'm putting this into context. For example, parliament passes a law. The public is not agreeing to that law. And in that sense, they might run to court to put an injunction towards that law. In between these particular processes, the president, since having a seal, went ahead and assent into that bill. What happens? Because there are a number of days that are open for litigation. And it is within the authority of the president, at the mercy of the president. Sometimes he returns the bills, sometimes he doesn't. So what if, in this particular one of the bills, he said, this one I'm ascending to, whether the public likes or not. I'm not opting a problem. I'm just saying a context that we are operating in. And that is why there needs to be powers that are within the state law office, including this particular seal of power. That is monumental towards an official certification of certain bills that are government. So I think I would plead that there needs to be a lot of restraint in terms of hurrying this kind of transition and allowing the public to understand the reason behind the transition.
You wanted to say something?
I think the bill went through an open process of public participation. And borrowing from many jurisdictions, the seal belongs to the president. It is the seal of the president of the Republic of Kenya.
When you say it went through
you can't have the seal
public
of the
participation,
president.
when was that?
You see, you're also not informed that this matter came up, I think, sometimes last year. And the matter was enacted by Parliament through a process of public participation. And you can check on those records. It was there, it was discussed, it was in the media. It was actually in the media. It was within the public domain. But what I want to state, what is it that happens in other jurisdictions? That's the question I want to ask. For example, the seal of the President of the United States of America, where is it domiciled? It is in the White House, and it is with the President, and it is known. The user of the seal is the President. The moment that seal leaves the White House, then anybody else can use and can exercise authorities of the President. And it is not only used to assent to bills. No, it's a seal of authority of many issues. And why would the office of the Attorney General be interested in performing the duties of the President, which are beyond its limit? Even when it comes to bills being assented to by the President, it is done with the approval of the office of the Attorney General. And it is signed and assented to in the presence of the Attorney General. So you want to tell us that even the pens that the President will use to sign, to assent into law, the state office would like to keep those particular stationery? No, definitely not. These are instruments and tools used by the President. And anytime he is executing duties or thinking about issues, he knows the seal is within his control. After independence, did we have the office of the head of the chief of staff in the office of the President? Probably we didn't have. And this is a new modern reorganization and repackaging of the presidency so that it works in a more effective, orderly, and secure manner. And there's nothing wrong with that. So why should we waste a whole time discussing about the seal, which is like a rubber stamp in the office of the President? And we have all possessed rubber stamps.
But it also carries weight.
In our offices.
I mean, you've just indicated that I think sometimes, and it has happened to all of us, sometimes you find that your own stamp or the office stamp is misused without your knowledge. It has happened. I mean, you find someone has nicked and taken your stamp and stamped a legal document without your knowledge, and you're the boss. So even the President himself probably might not be safe by having the seal in the office that is domiciled on the White House. Yeah. I mean, things happen. So what we are saying is that
How?
the nature of the transition, this is where Kenyans have a problem with.
Yes.
There is no any other, in context of what has been going on, that certain government officials documents, certain bills, could definitely be stamped without the knowledge of himself. So it happens. It can happen within that office. So I think I keep on saying there needs to be a thorough explanation. And this is where the office of the government spokesperson still comes in to explain.
Yes.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Well, Migwi.
Yes. Even as you respond, he has said the nature of transition, the way it was done, and that is why some Kenyans may question the intent.
Migwi, my brother Sosiomi,
Yes.
we can discuss this matter is not trivial as you want to trivialize it. If it was that trivial, it would not have made to the headline of today's newspaper. Having come to the newspaper now, we can't treat it as trivial as some people would wish. The seal is not just a stamp. It represents official transactions, including ascending to the bills, transactions between our country and others. So it's so important that we can discuss it for days until we get the correct answer. How, when it was agreed that it moves, and what reasons, what good reasons that were considered for it to be removed in the safe custody of the office of the Attorney General. So it's a serious matter. Yes.
So whose responsibility is it to make Kenyans understand the transition that you're talking about?
The newspaper indicates that the seal has been removed from the office of the Attorney General to the office of the President. Therefore, then, the presidency has all the rights to inform Kenyans and tell them, cool your nerves, this seal is in safe custody. And for those who are not in the know, public participation took place between this and this time, and these were the channels that were used to carry out public participation.
Yes.
Thank you.
Indeed. I want us to delve into another matter involving IEBC vetting, and the High Court the other day stopped the vetting, gave orders to withhold the vetting, and it's a story that has made the headlines on the front page of the Star newspaper. IEBC vetting order could trigger crisis. What do you foresee this, Mwalimu Sosion? What do you foresee in all this, now given that the vetting has been withheld by the High Court?
Well, I hope the matter will be resolved within the court so that the vetting of the nominees can proceed and IBC commissioners can be formally appointed by the president through a gazette notice and sworn into office. I would not like to contemplate a situation of the further deepening of the crisis that is already too bad within our electoral system. Because one, delimitation of boundaries has not been done. And if delimitation of boundaries is not done, then the elections of 2027 becomes invalid, null, and void. That's a fact for sure. Number two, the audit of 2022 elections has not been done, but that needs to be done. By-elections for the many constituencies that are vacant. Some have been vacant for almost 3 years. It needs to be conducted, and adequate, sufficient preparation for 2027 election that the public and Kenyans must be convinced that the country is ready. So as you can see, we are facing a very serious constitutional crisis that has been created at the judicial levels. Because the delay in allowing the nominating panel to perform its job earlier enough was caused by the courts through litigations. Now, the delay in Parliament vetting the nominees is being delayed by the courts. And this is likely going to deepen the country into a very serious constitutional crisis. And according to me, the judicial arm of government should exercise a lot of restraint in inhibiting the executive arm of government or parliament from doing what it has to do. The role of judiciary is to interpret the laws and to guide the other arms of government to work within the law in what it intends to do. What is so unlawful with these nominees that it warrants the court to seriously suspend it. You know, it is like nullifying the whole process, and it's like jeopardizing, and it's telling Kenyans that this process is fundamentally wrong. Those are not good indicators for an electoral process, and we are in a country where we are trying to build trust in our public institutions. If we had issues at the panel level, then now we have issues at the vetting level, then it looks like we'll have issues in every operation, literally, of the IBC, and that's not good for the country.
The petitioners...
Let us let our institutions work.
Yes. The petitioners argue that the recruitment process was opaque and was marred with the irregularities, and they want it nullified. Now, looking at the timelines that we have, Bwana Peter, do you see if this continues, the litigations and everything, IEBC meeting the targets and the timelines that we have?
Well, for the first time since we started this show, I want to agree with my brother here, Sosioni. If those petitioners,
And
they can pick
with everything else I've said.
for that, for the first time, I'm very specific. I'm agreeing with you on this one only.
Yes.
That the petitioners should have come out plainly that it was not done openly. We have issues with one. But the matter of the courts being used to suspend such a serious process, it is hurting every Kenyan. And what people need to remember, Regimes come and regimes go. The government is perpetual. So is Kenya. So when you take some decision because of influence from some quarters, just to see that you are shining, you need first of all to consider that Kenya is bigger than the regime of belonging to this or that. And with that consideration then, the court should have maybe advised that go back to the center, make your petition properly, objectively, and pick sensible things. Because now you see, as you said, we have a number of constituencies, wards, and many other places that don't have representation because you cannot carry out simple by-election, right? And now, when you just wholesomely say, we are not going to vote all of them, I'm sensing some sinister motive. Is it that all the nominees are not pleasant to Kenyans or to some quarters of the political divide? And who is supposed to be either the chair, the CEO, the member of IBC? Are those Kenyans? Are they qualified? Do you have issues with some of them? Do you have issues with how some of them were recruited? Because it's in public domain. Some of them are said to have not been shortlisted, but they found their way in the interview panels, and they became nominees. They were cleared. If we have such, we should pick on such, but not suspend the operations of this country because of our political differences. Please.
Orogo, do you think it should have been a matter of specifics and, in a sense, as a country, do we have to oppose everything?
We have a really vibrant civic space and a very progressive constitution.
Yes.
And I think in the exercise of our democratic right, we definitely as a country really want and test these particular institutions and the instrument that we have. However, let me also pick a cue and say that it is unprecedented. It wasn't really, right for the court to halt the recruitment process of the IBC chair and the commissioners. I mean, look at the context we are operating on as a country.
Yes.
Judge Johan Kriegler had issued a statement towards this after the inquiry of post-election violence. I think he was looking at the constitutional crisis aspect of the post-election violence and the political aspect, as Waki Commission was looking at the criminal side. But I think Kriegler gave a very interesting pointer that we need to have IBC constituted at least 3 years to the election. Why was that? Because then it gives IBC time to settle. It gives the commissioners, and because what we have now probably is the secretariat, right?
Yes.
I don't know whether the secretariat is also constituted fully, but then we don't have a commissioners and the chair.
Yes,
so which means the IBC technically cannot function. So what does that mean? It implies that the areas that are expecting by-election are denied the opportunity to be represented. It also says that Kenyans would really delay in terms of boundaries review. But most importantly is the processes that happens between now to the elections, including the voter audit, including new voter registration. I think that will take place. Continuous voter. I think it's important also to say that there needs to be a continuous voter education. That is within the mandate of IBC. It's not only conducting elections and calling it a day. There needs to be a civic education aspect part of IBC that does. So when you look at this aspect and the timeline and what the court has actually done, sometimes I'm also, as much as we have a vibrant legal space, but it's time, I think, to compel the judges to exactly know and go deep to the merits of the case. And because I always believe that once a case is looked at, the evidence that is, the aspect that controls the problem, the evidence that is presented, and the public opinion. What is the interest of the public of a nation but particular time? So I agree with the panel here today that we are slowly plunging into a constitutional crisis that is caused by political disagreement. And I think this is very wrong, that we are having political canvassing. The Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka had actually written to President William Ruto, expressing, his outrage in the nomination of commissioners. Yeah. The civil society has got an interest. Probably other people has got an interest. We do not know exactly who is really having an interest behind all these litigations. They could be. But what is happening is that we are slowly headed to a constitutional crisis. That is occasional political crisis that will plunge the country into uncertainty. And I think I beg the court in their wisdom to probably read the context at which we are right now as a country and make a sound judgment that will safeguard the country now.
Bwana Sossion, as all this is happening, and I will take this as your closing remarks, what can Kenyans expect in all this? Because this is happening, there are the litigations and questions have been raised about the commission. What does it mean, and how does it impact the trust of the commission in the public domain?
I think that's a hard question that is very difficult to discern a proper answer. And I think for me, I should just look at the limitations of roles of institutions. The judiciary should not exercise extreme and excessive powers that subjugates the operations of executive and parliament.
Yes.
That is not right. It is not what was envisaged.
Okay.
That one arm of government is going to completely gag other arms of government from operating, because that gagging of other arms of operation is denying Kenyans their services and their rights. And that actually is creating anarchy. In this circumstance, the judiciary should be very cautious not to promote harmony while it is thinking it is adjudicating over disputes and matters in a fair way.
Okay.
There is the issue of timelines.
Yes.
If indeed the judiciary found sufficient grounds to issue conservatory orders, then it should have an urgent timeline that should not exceed 14 days to dispense of the matter.
All right.
So that, but when you put an injunction and you don't have a timeline on when to dispose of the matter, then you create a crisis. And out of the judicial process, we all know the IBC has suffered because of judicial barriers. But then all those barriers had been removed and the panel has worked. We have names.
Yes.
Those names cannot be vetted by the judiciary, by constitution, in terms of timelines. Those names can only be vetted by Parliament.
Yes.
And the public can give their submissions to Parliament.
Yes.
So the petitioners who went to court should have submitted their petitions to what? To Parliament. Because Parliament exercise equal powers to the judiciary in certain circumstances. And therefore, the process of vetting is also another stage where Kenyans can give their submissions and reservations about the persons who have been nominated. Why is the judiciary denying Kenyans the opportunity to present their views through Parliament? That's another platform to use. Why are you doing that? That is, and I think this is where what you call rulings and judgments by activisms and emotions. It doesn't mean that any judgment that comes from the judiciary is right. Some of the judgments are defective and dangerous, and that is why you appeal. And some of them, in my other life where I used to work, I would see that this judgment is just meant to be a very unfair judgment, and sometimes you even defy.
Yes.
Yes.
Peter, in terms of public trust in
Why do you defy it?
You defy a judgment that is not
exactly in terms of
because
public
you-
trust, because we are talking about a commission that will handle the elections. In terms of public
And
trust,
this
this
is
litigation.
where Parliament can even, there is nothing wrong
This-
if
this
Parliament
litigations-
can continue with the process of vetting.
Okay,
There's
these
nothing wrong.
litigations, and I'll take this as your closing remarks. What do you see as the impact on public trust on it?
Already, the ruling by the court is it's making the public believe that even after the commission is the petition, then there is the ruling, then it is said let's continue the process at the legislative, that is National Assembly. The public already have a feeling that we are going to have a commission that is not credible. Then it affects the public opinion about a commission. And I wish the judiciary foresaw that one before declared what they declared, that granting the prayers of the petitioners, because not all the prayers should be given automatically.
Okay.
It has the rights and privileges to decline. So it means they never went deeply scrutinizing sentence by sentence and seeing the results from the beginning.
All right.
So the trust, public trust, as far as IBC is concerned, the future IBC concerned, it's in question.
All right, Orogo,
Yeah.
your closing remarks.
The only point I find the selection panel, I fault the selection panel, is that there was no consideration of a young person as a commissioner. There was application of young people there, and some of them appeared on the vetting panel. That is the only point. The composition of IBC must reflect the diversity that is, we should have as a country. As I conclude, I think it's, my colleagues have said, it's important for the judiciary to be considerate
Indeed.
of the national moods
Thank you.
and in the context that we face.
Thank you so much. That is Daniel Orogo, who is a political and governance expert, Honorable Wilson Sosion, who is a former nominated MP, and also Honorable Peter Mutuku Mutua is the head of service delivery in Nairobi and political analyst, joining us here on The Viewpoint to talk about various issues within the political landscape of this country. My name is Mark Migu. This is where we end this conversation. Keep it KBC Channel 1. Stay with us.